Welcome back to the No Destination podcast. These are the stories behind the songs. Today's episode coincides with the release of my next single, Laughing Heart. It's a song from the Late Bloomer and a Wallflower Suit sessions, but this one carries a little bit different weight. So we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about the inspiration, we're going to talk about the album, and we'll talk about some other stuff. So friends, lovers, ex-lovers, or whatever, as the Susto song goes, thanks for joining us. Let's dig in. This is a song that started from a poem, but not written by me. There was a reading of a Charles Bukowski poem by the singer-songwriter Tom Waits that really affected me, and I've kept this really old link almost since the beginning of YouTube, I think. I'll post it in the show notes. But it's essentially a poem written by Charles Bukowski where Tom Waits is reading it. And it's a marvelous reading of the poem. It's one that carried just as much weight because of who was reading it and how he was reading it, is maybe even the words. So I'm actually going to read the poem to you, and in no way am I going to attempt to top Tom Waits, because he's Tom Waits and I'm Dylan Kight. But it actually shares the same name. The poem is called The Laughing Heart. So here it is. The Laughing Heart by Charles Bukowski. Your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. Be on the watch. There is light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. Be on the watch. The gods will offer you chances. Know them. Take them. You can't beat death, but you can beat death in life, sometimes. And the more often you learn to do it, the more light there will be. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it. You are marvelous. The gods wait to delight in you. Wow. What a poem. What a piece of work that was. And it really inspired me. So not only by the title, but the essence. And there's a lot of things in that poem that we've been talking about in regards to Late Bloomer in a Wallflower Suit and the idea that your life is your life. This is what we've been talking about. These are not all my ideas. I look for the same sort of inspiration that I'm trying to put out there because that's what inspired me. And I love sharing these kind of things with you. This is a big-hearted poem, and it's also a poem that's rooted in realism. And so it's acknowledging the weight of the world and humanity. And there's only so much that one could do in their own life. And it hit me all in the feels, y'all. So I'm going to read it one more time because you got to experience it the first time and you may not know what was coming, and now you do. So I'm going to read it again so you don't have to rewind. But be kind and rewind for all those that were Blockbuster kids. And if you're one of those Hollywood video kids, don't add at me. We all know Blockbuster is the OG. Anyway, I digress. The Laughing Heart by Charles Bukowski. Your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. Be on the watch. There are ways out. There is light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. Be on the watch. The gods will offer you chances. Know them. Take them. You can't beat death, but you can beat death in life, sometimes. The more often you learn to do it, the more light there will be. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it. You are marvelous. The gods wait to delight in you. So, in full transparency, I was never a Bukowski. Obviously, he's super talented. But there's a lot of things that wrapped up in his creative life that never really spoke to me. But this poem did that. It really spoke to me. And I think that why I wanted to share it is because I think it would speak to you as well. That poem says it all in a lot of ways, right? So how could you make the words better than this effort? I'm not sure you can. But we're going to dig into the song now. Laughing Heart is a song that, from a structure standpoint, we approached very much in the same way that Good Trouble another song off Late Bloomer, and a Wallflower Suit was set up. And there's actually a mix that I don't think we saved, but we kind of got deep in the weeds where this version almost turned into like a strange Strawberry Fields Forever type of vibe, like musically, and that was probably just a little too on the nose for the actual melody. Let me share a quick story for you. Grew up a huge music fan, if you can't already tell. The cover of the record is me with an armful of records at the Atlanta Jazz Pop Festival. It was at Grant Park, it was at Piedmont Park, and so it was kind of cool kind of going back through the history, figuring out which year I was there. I was a huge music fan. Both of my parents were really into music, and that was very informative to my journey. When we would go on vacations when I was younger, we would go to like cities, because yours truly, I did not like beaches. And for what it's worth, I still don't love beaches. We used to go to cities. We used to go experience, other things. And New York was one of those places that my mom and I went. Now, I was also a really big Beatles fan. And so we made a point to go to the Dakota, the Strawberry Fields Forever, where the Imagine, the iconic, I don't know what you call that. I guess it's some sort of memorial right across the street from the Dakota. And we made a point a couple times that my mom and I went to New York together to visit that. And so Oasis were getting back together, and that's probably worth doing a whole podcast on. We took a family trip to New York and LA to go see the aforementioned Oasis. And one of the things that we decided to do was, let's go see the Imagine Memorial in Strawberry Fields. Now, my son was about the same age when I first went, and we didn't put a lot of thought into what that may mean or may not mean to him. So we took the train from Brooklyn to Manhattan, and you make your way from the subway, you walk all the way up there, and my son couldn't have cared less about the Imagine Memorial. Now, he was a good sport about it, but it was at that moment I realized that my son doesn't even care about the Beatles, and that memorial wasn't noteworthy to him, to say the least. But the Strawberry Fields reference made me think of that, because that was something that happened. And you learn these things as a parent, as a partner, that some things that mean something to you maybe don't matter to other people in the same way. But Andy is the one that had the excellent suggestion of making the bridge the chorus, and the chorus the bridge, which that's never happened before. And so he was really instrumental in the layout of this song. So I'm going to read the song to you almost as a poem, because if you're going to go up against Bukowski, you might as well just go for it. We're not going to break down the song section by section. This will be coming out on Tuesday, September 30th, which I'm super excited about. Here are the lyrics to Laughing Heart. When the flowers have all wilted and you don't know where you are, just a punk, a misfit, somehow you made it this far. The city's just an escape for your laughing heart. The artful dodger is more than just a clever fool. The painter paints a contradiction and calls it the truth. The mother holds it together and says it all with I love you. There ain't no doubt about the way the loudest things we never say rattle around our bones and say, like the broken stars shining far away. Time's a funny thing, but no one ever laughs. The sun passes through the window, another day slips on through. I remember the way I felt against the color of that room. There ain't no doubt about the way the loudest things we never say rattle around our bones and stay, like the broken stars shining far away. The thought crosses my mind until I'm all in knots. The older I get, the more sure I'm not what has come before or what lies ahead. There ain't no doubt about the way the loudest things we never say rattle around our bones and stay, like broken stars shining far away. So that's my version of Laughing Heart, which was inspired by the Charles Bukowski poem, The Laughing Heart, and specifically the Tom Waits reading of that. So musically, we had this approach very similar to Good Trouble. And sonically, it sat in this space of somewhere near Good Trouble, but in between Dark Water. And ultimately, that's why I didn't make the record. Not because we didn't really love the song or think it brought something different to the sonic palette, but there's also a certain amount of minutes we were trying to stay under each side of the vinyl to make sure that it had the highest fidelity on the vinyl pressing. So that was a large consideration. And then the fact that it existed in kind of these two other songs, not subject matter or melodies, but just in vibe, it made it to where it's like, let's save that. It'll either go on the next record or it'll be like a standalone song. So we decided for the latter. So Laughing Heart was really close to making it. If you're just catching on now, the record's been out since May. This will probably be the last thing that is new that gets released from the record. And this will conclude the Late Bloomer and a Wallflower Suit season, which then we can start talking about brand new things, whatever it is that we want to. Because in some respects, these will be evergreen. I really tried to keep to that and not talk about topical things or things that were happening in my day-to-day gigging life that would have informed these podcast episodes, which maybe could have made it more listenable. You be the judge. But I really wanted these first batch of episodes to be about the record and to go deep on that. We've talked in other episodes about the contributions of the folks that played on the record. And it goes without saying that this record, Late Bloomer and a Wallflower Suit, I'm the most proud of this record, anything I've ever been a part of. I feel very fortunate about that. And it would not have been possible without the contributions and creative efforts from Andrew McFarland, who played drums and had such a wonderful musicality to his playing and his suggestions and his ideas. Andy Lemaster, who was really the backbone sonically, besides his gracious and a wonderful sense of humor. It was a true partnership, and one that I'm not sure if I've ever had that creatively. I've had that personally with people and bands that I've been a part of, but to be able to have a foil and someone to present ideas and songs and feel safe in that way, that he always wanted what was best for the music. And it was a true collaboration. And Andy's a big reason why the record sounds as good as it does. Everything from his bass playing to his background vocals to his ability on the song. The bridge should be the chorus and the chorus should probably be the bridge, which I hadn't thought of that. Michael Cotter, who played guitar on half the record, a big part of the Brilliant Mistakes sound, and was a big reason why this record was even made. There was a lot of inertia towards these songs, and he was a big part of that. So I just wanted to acknowledge the folks that played on this record because they all played a really important part. And I've gotten asked, whether it was at the album release show or since then, about making the record or any suggestions that I would have. And this record did not make a lot of sense to make. It was a huge time commitment. It was something that should have started way before I started this with Andy, and it should have been finished before Andy got here. But this record and these songs survived in such a way that they found the right time to find people and find me. I'm one of those. Some people believe that songwriters are these mythical beings who just have this innate ability that most people don't. I view it kind of like being a butterfly catcher, where at this time I was just the one with the net trying to catch things, and I got lucky. What I would say is that it's really important that you do things, no matter what it is. And I think it's easy to put this in a musical context because that's what the podcast is mainly about, are my songs, right? So it's easy to make the correlation between advice and music. In my life, I've done big, weird things that I have no business being a part of, kind of like making this record. And I thought I was done with music when I made the EP at Chase Park in 2010. I made that acoustic EP with David Barbie. While I was involved in some projects after that, I thought that I did what I could do. I put out the music that I put out. I put as much as I could into those projects, and it was time to enter a different phase of life. In a way, I was right. I needed to be a person, and I'm all or nothing if you don't know that about me. I don't really know how to have hobbies. That is a fatal flaw of yours truly. But when I say this record doesn't make sense to make, it's because you can look on paper and say, hey, I could have made something similar at home, which I could have. But this is no different than how I first started running. I realized that I didn't hate it. It didn't make me want to stop, and it didn't make me want to do something else. And then I started thinking, what if I ran outside? Because running inside kind of sucks, doing sprints, and like the treadmill is like my least favorite part. And I did that. And then I started running, and I signed up for a race, and a 10K turned into a half, and a half turned into way more halves, and a half turned into 10Ks and marathons, and then going to Baton Rouge for the USA Track and Field Masters program, which is still wild that I participated in that. And I don't know really what to tell you about your life. I could just tell you about mine. And it's the times where I just followed the thing that felt the best at the time is when I was the happiest. And when I was making this record creatively, I've never been happier. I felt like I was doing something that I never thought I'd get to do. And it didn't make a ton of sense. And I guess really what I want you to get from this is it doesn't have to make a ton of sense. If you're the only person in your friend group that likes pickleball, well, maybe that's a bad example because it seems like everybody likes pickleball of a certain age at this point. But whatever it is, underwater basket weaving, and you just have a passion for it. You have a passion for the kind of baskets and the kind of water that needs to be present, the time of year, the time of day. Then don't be afraid to throw 110% of yourself into that. That's what I did with this record. It did not make a ton of sense. And there were some times where it had been really easy to pack it in and just call it an EP. Well, here's 3 songs, everybody. They sound good. But I got to a certain distance. It was like with the sprints, it was like, what if I just kept going? What if I just did the scary thing that doesn't make sense and signed up for a half marathon? Or I did this scary thing and ran a full marathon, which is scary. If you're signed up for a marathon, please follow a training plan. How I ended up in this way is I have this very absolute way of looking at things. And this was my reminder that there are just seasons in life. And you may be in a season in your life where you have too much on your plate and you need to be with your family more. You might be in a season of life where you need to really buckle down and find a new job, or you need to paint, or you need to travel because your hometown doesn't feel like yours anymore. Whatever that is. Be in that season, but be completely in that season. Don't go halfway. And I'm not saying your buddies invite you to go play golf, which don't invite me. I don't play golf. But let's just say that they invite you to some recreational activity and you go all out before you've even done it once, before you even get there. You buy all the expensive clubs, you buy the outfit, and you buy the shoes, and you've never even played. That might be a good example of like, follow the muse a little bit before you get there, right? Someone invites you fishing, you don't, buy the boat and buy all the fishing rods and lures and bait and tackle box, and you get a monogram and you've spent all this money or whatever. Make sure it's something that speaks to you, right? That's what I'm saying. The moderation is just making sure it's something that you actually enjoy. So do that for yourself, maybe for the sake of those that are around you. And it makes me think of this other quote by Dahl, and what I mean about not just being halfway into things. I begin to realize how important it is to be an enthusiast in life. If you are interested in something, no matter what it is, go at it full speed ahead. Embrace it with both arms. Hug it. Love it. And above all, become passionate about it. Lukewarm is no good. Hot is no good either. White hot and passionate is the only thing to be. I want to feel like what I'm doing is lighting my spirit on fire. I'm not a religious person, but things that I do that I really enjoy, that's what it does to me. It's all I think about. I go to bed thinking about it. I research it. I think about how I can get better. I think about what I'm going to do When's the next time I'm going to be able to do it? All those things. And you could think back to that poem I read you, The Laughing Heart, right? There is light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these moments to be completely inspired, to be on fire, to have myself, be in the moment of these things. That to me is what being alive is. And making this record, that's what I felt like. And that's what I want other people to have. Not that we all need to go out and make albums, but do stuff that makes you feel alive. Life is too short. It's far too short. So follow that muse. Chase that dragon, whatever it is. And don't be afraid to slay that dragon. You hear about it, people who go skydiving. If that's your thing, God bless you. I'm not one who leaves a plane that functions, personally. I hope that for other people, that they find those things. And I want to be and have constantly been inspired by people who do that for themselves. And so I love being able to hear someone like Simon Sinek talk about what he's passionate about. It fills me up. Really, those kind of moments that I'm looking for. I love hearing passionate people talk about their process, talk about what sets them on fire. And those are the things you got to seek out. There's only so much TMZ or Instagram or whatever social media that you can consume. It's like junk food, right? A lot of social media, in my estimation, is geared to feed that dopamine that is immediate and then dissipates almost immediately. And what I'm speaking about are the things that set you on fire for weeks, for months, for years. And that's the thing I think we got to fight. And sometimes it's as simple as like coffee to me. And I go on these crazy journeys about the right temperature to brew coffee and the coarseness of the beans and what that does to the flavor. And I'm fascinated by that because it does something to my brain that, hey, I'm trying to figure something out. And that's all what I think we're trying to do. And I know that there are going to be moments in life that come up where I won't be able to be as focused or as present. Like I said, there are seasons. And so this was a season in life where I could invest more time in something like this. But we all need those things, right? We all got to find that light, even if it's not much light, because it beats the darkness. In Late Bloomer in a Wallflower Suit is an act of rebellion. It's about someone who didn't give up on themselves, who didn't give up on what inspires me and what I wanted to talk about. That's the thing I don't stop doing. I've written a bunch of songs, and I'm really excited because I've gotten to the point where I've started to dream up the next record, which is a really fun place for me to be creatively. I've taken some songwriting courses. There was one that Buck Meek did with Big Thief that I did that was really informative, where he just talked about things that he uses and ways he inspires himself and kind of breaks out of ruts. And there was one-on-one I did with Margaret Glaspie, who's a wonderful songwriter. And I remember asking her what she did or how she approached the ending of an album and the beginning of another one. Like, does she change notebooks? I wanted to know that level of detail. Did she start writing in a different room? And the answer was a little bit messier than that, because the way that the recording process happens, you go in with a batch of songs, you may record them all, and then you need a couple more, and then you dip into some of the newer stuff you're writing. And so it's never completely clean, right? But that's what's really been fascinating me this time, is I feel like I made a record where it sounds like the way it sounds in my head. And over the last couple months, I've created this mood board in my notebook of what I want the next record to sound like. And that's really, really exciting. And I can't wait to start recording that. I can't wait to get to that point where I feel that pressure again, that good pressure of putting those stories to etching them into stone somewhat and recording a final version. I don't love demos, so I don't love making these like really curated demos. I do a lot of stuff with like my iPhone voice memos. That's where I do all my demos. And I think that's a big way that allows the things to kind of become whatever they're going to be. So I don't create like this like 90% demo that then I try to make better. So that's a little bit about the way I look at making demos. But that's also a bit what I've been kind of preoccupied with the past couple months since the record came out, is the way that the next record is going to sound. And that's really exciting. And as we close this chapter on Late Bloomer and Wallflower Suit, I hope that these stories that I've shared and why they were important to me mean something to you, or you can apply it in your own situation. And when people ask me about making the record, and I say things like it didn't make sense because it could just have been an EP or it could have been whatever, I hope that you believe in something crazy enough that makes you want to experiment with the temperature of the water when you brew coffee, that makes you want to read all the books that an author has written because you finally feel like somebody's speaking to you, or you love a band so much you travel all over the country just to see them for the first time in a long time. Those are those moments that inspire me. Those are the things that fill me up, and that's what I want to do with this community, is continue to talk about ways to stay inspired and to figure out ways that we can inspire each other. My first love has been records, and I'll continue to use this podcast as a way to talk about songs and the stories behind songs. But I'm also going to talk about some of my favorite records and why I love them so much. And I think there's a lot of magic in records. Somebody close to me told me that I'm not whimsical. And it's kind of funny. I had like this visceral reaction. I'm like, whimsical? I'm whimsical. Like I don't even know if I was, but like that's your first reaction. Like, well, sure I am. I create things that didn't exist before. I think really what the person meant is I don't like Harry Potter, and I've never seen Star Wars. I've never seen Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or any of that stuff. So this is that moment where all the middle-aged white men who listen to this, we're going to start unsubscribing. But I encourage you to stay here and to lean in. It's important to know what inspires you, what you're whimsical about. And music is that thing for me. I used to think that there have been times where I haven't been an avid reader. There are some times where I'll read a couple books at a time, and that feels good. And there are times where I'll read one book, and it'll take me months. And it never really makes a lot of sense. A lot of it's just like what I have going on in my personal life. But Elvis Costello is someone who I was always aware of growing up because my mom really liked him as a songwriter. And he's a phenomenal lyricist, very prolific. And I was reading an interview with him where they were asking him, like, what kind of books did he read that kind of inspired some of his lyrical prose or approaches. And he was like, I don't read at all. And I might be exaggerating a little bit, but what I got from it is he didn't read very much, if at all. That he listened to an obscene amount of music, and music completely inspired him. And that's the way I feel. Whether I'm reading one book or a bunch of books, there's still something about hearing a band for the first time or a songwriter for the first time you wish you had written, or that completely speaks to you. Because I go back to the past episode where I was talking about we're kind of like this walking glass museum of your own history. And you're so convinced that you're the only person that's ever felt these emotions. When in reality, we all live through something similar. We all have our own trauma. We have all the bad stuff, and we've had our own good stuff. And we're way more alike than we are different, in my opinion. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we're way more alike than we're different. And even though it may feel like these emotions are uniquely yours, the reason why a song could cut you in half, or it can fill up all the cracks in your heart, is because from our emotional level, we have similar wants. We have similar desires. We have similar fears. And music is one of those things that can get through to almost anybody. And that's why I love it so much. And that's what I'm whimsical about. And so we're going to talk about records. We'll talk about songs. We'll talk about musical moments that shaped me. Although it is quite comforting in a strange way that it's just you and I. I don't know where you're driving. If you are driving, maybe you're on your porch. Maybe you're working and instead you're listening to Dylan expand this podcast length by just talking. But that's kind of what a podcast is, right? That's what I love about conversations. Like when you go meet a friend for coffee, they're the things you want to talk about that hopefully you get to get off your chest or share, or things that you wanted to be able to communicate. And then there's like those other moments, like the funny moments. I don't want to talk about current events, but I met a friend for coffee and a butterfly landed on my hand. And it was just like, oh, that's unplanned. And I think that's kind of how podcasts are. There's unplanned things. And I don't script these out. Art is out September 30th. And it was inspired by a poem that means a whole lot to me, especially the Tom Waits reading of said poem. Again, just very grateful for the musicians who helped shape this record, Late Bloomer and Wallflower Suit. These podcast episodes are going to change a little bit, and we're going to talk about songs and albums and other projects that I'm involved with. This series is going to change a little bit, but I hope to continue this dialogue. I like it, even if it may sound crazy, and hopefully you do. And I think by the feedback I've gotten so far, I think that I'm striking a nerve, or hopefully speaking to those that need to hear it. But don't be afraid to do big things. Don't be afraid to be passionate about something that doesn't make a lot of sense. In the end, that's what makes you you. And we need people to be themselves, even if they're weird. That's what makes the world go round. And the best friends I have in the world are unapologetically themselves through thick and thin. And that's what I want us all to do. Be passionate, have things that light us up. And in that way, it inspires everyone else to do the same. So until next time.